Victor Fonseca, a self-made millionaire known across his city for his success and discipline, was about to sign the biggest contract of his career. Before heading to the meeting, he stopped for a simple cup of coffee at a small cafeteria near his mansion, a place he often visited to clear his mind. What should have been just another quiet pause in his routine quickly turned into something far more serious, something he never expected to face. As Victor sat there unaware and unprotected, danger was already moving toward him. A young man entered the cafeteria carrying a weapon, his hands shaking, his thoughts filled with fear and desperation. Watching from behind the counter, the waitress froze. She recognized him instantly. It was her brother. In that moment, she understood that someone's life was about to end, and that she was standing at the center of it. But this was not just a random attack. Hidden behind this moment was a chain of envy, betrayal, and quiet decisions made in the shadows. A powerful rival, a ruined reputation, and a plan meant to destroy a man who believed he was finally in control of his life. And yet, standing between life and death was not a guard or the police, but an ordinary woman forced to make an impossible choice. Who was really behind this plan? Why was a desperate young man pushed to cross a line he never wanted to cross? And how could one small decision inside a simple cafeteria change the fate of everyone involved? Before we dive into this powerful story of ambition, guilt, and redemption, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories with shocking twists and deep human moments, don't forget to subscribe. Victor Fonseca was known by almost everyone in the city. People spoke his name with respect, and sometimes with fear. He was a millionaire who had built everything from nothing. There was no inheritance, no powerful family behind him, and no shortcuts. He started with little, worked longer hours than anyone else, and slowly climbed until his name became a reference in business circles. Many admired his discipline and his results. Others saw him as cold, distant, and impossible to compete with. Victor did not correct any of these opinions. He rarely explained himself and did not feel the need to be liked. What mattered was that he had proven he was capable. Even so, when the business day ended and the offices were empty, Victor returned to a large house that felt quiet and still. There were no voices waiting for him, no shared meals, and no one asking how his day had been. His success was visible to everyone, but his solitude was something only he felt. From the outside, his life looked complete. From the inside, it felt unfinished. He had reached a level many dreamed of, yet there was a constant sense that something important was missing, something money had never managed to bring into his life. Victor's reputation had been built over many years of consistency and control. He was known as someone who did not fail easily and did not forgive mistakes quickly. Competitors studied his moves carefully, knowing that any small error could cost them everything. Employees followed his rules closely, aware that he valued results above excuses. Despite this image, Victor lived in a very simple way. He did not enjoy showing off his wealth or reminding others of his position. His clothes were clean and well chosen, but never flashy. His routines were basic, almost repetitive, and he preferred quiet places over exclusive events. He avoided social gatherings that felt forced or empty. Luxury never excited him the way people expected it to. For Victor, money had always been a tool, not a reward. It was something he used to build, to protect, and to move forward. Still, every night when the noise of the world faded, he felt the same question return. What was all of this for? He had achieved what many considered the final goal, yet he felt no real sense of arrival. The respect, fear, and admiration of others could not replace genuine connection. As Victor prepared for the most important contract of his career, the pressure around him increased. This deal was larger than anything he had signed before and would place him at a level few could reach. Advisors, lawyers, and executives reminded him constantly of its importance. They spoke about numbers, influence, and long-term impact. Victor listened carefully, as he always did, but something inside him felt distant. He knew the contract would change his professional life, but he also knew it would not change how he felt when he was alone. On paper, this moment represented victory. In his mind, it felt like another step on a road that never truly ended. He reviewed documents, checked details, and prepared mentally, but there was no celebration in his thoughts. Instead, he reflected on how far he had come and how little his personal life had moved with him. The closer he got to this milestone, the more he noticed the absence of people who could share it with him in a meaningful way. Victor often remembered his early years, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. Back then, life was harder, but simpler. His goals were small and direct, and each achievement felt personal. As his world grew larger, his circle grew smaller. Success demanded distance, caution, and constant control. He accepted these rules because they helped him survive and win. However, over time, those same rules isolated him. He trusted very few people and kept emotional walls high. Even when surrounded by others, he felt separate from them. Conversations were usually about work, strategy, or expectations. Rarely did anyone ask who Victor was beyond his results, and rarely did he allow anyone to see that part of himself. He told himself that this was the price of success, and for years, that explanation was enough. Now, standing so close to the biggest achievement of his career, that explanation felt weak. He had everything he once wanted, yet he felt no sense of peace. Despite his wealth, Victor kept habits that reflected his modest nature. He did not need attention or praise to feel validated. He preferred calm mornings, simple meals, and moments of silence. These small choices helped him feel grounded in a life that often felt artificial. He knew many people who chased success only to feel lost once they achieved it, but he never imagined he would feel the same. He had believed discipline and purpose would protect him from emptiness. Now he understood that achievement alone could not fill every space. As he moved through his days preparing for the contract, he noticed how routine everything had become. Meetings followed meetings, and decisions followed decisions, but none of it touched him emotionally. There was no excitement, only responsibility. Victor was admired for his strength, but few realized how tired he was of carrying everything alone. He had learned how to win, but he had never learned how to share the victory. On the eve of signing the contract, Victor allowed himself a rare moment of honesty. Sitting quietly, he acknowledged the truth he often avoided. He was proud of what he had built, but he felt disconnected from it. The success that once motivated him now felt distant, like something he managed rather than lived. He questioned whether the next achievement would feel any different from the last. Deep down, he suspected it would not. Still, he knew he would move forward. That was who he was. He did not stop, even when uncertain. The contract represented years of effort, and he would honor that journey. Yet beneath his calm and controlled exterior, there was a silent hope that something, or someone, might one day give meaning to everything he had achieved. For now, Victor stood alone with his success, respected by many, understood by few, and aware that his greatest challenge had never been business, but loneliness. Jacob had built his career believing he was meant to win. For years, he competed directly with Victor Fonseca, watching every move, studying every success, and measuring himself against him. In Jacob's mind, they were equals, even if the world did not always agree. When the news broke that Victor had secured the Millionaire contract, Jacob felt his image collapse in front of everyone. Clients who once respected him stopped calling. Partners who once listened now questioned his judgment. His name, which had carried weight, suddenly sounded weaker in meetings and conversations. The loss was not just financial. It was public, visible, and impossible to hide. Jacob felt exposed. He replayed the moment again and again, thinking about how close he had been and how easily Victor had taken everything. He smiled in public, but inside, he felt small. The contract represented years of effort, and losing it made him feel like all that work meant nothing. He could accept losing money, but losing status was something he was not prepared for. His pride was wounded deeply, and that pain stayed with him. As days passed, Jacob noticed how quickly people changed their behavior toward him. Invitations stopped coming. Conversations ended sooner than before. Even his own team seemed less confident when they spoke to him. The respect he once commanded faded faster than he expected. Every reminder of Victor's success felt like a personal attack. Jacob compared his own situation to Victor's rise and felt a growing sense of injustice. In his mind, Victor did not deserve such a victory. Jacob convinced himself that he had worked just as hard, taken the same risks, and made the same sacrifices. Yet the result was different. This difference turned into bitterness. He began to feel that the world had chosen Victor and rejected him. The humiliation was not quiet or private. It was discussed, implied, and felt in every professional space he entered. Jacob could not escape it. He felt watched and judged. The more he thought about it, the more his frustration grew. Instead of reflecting on his own mistakes, he focused entirely on Victor. Blaming Victor became easier than accepting failure. Jacob's envy slowly became the center of his thoughts. He followed news related to Victor closely, reading every mention of his success. Each article and comment reminded him of what he had lost. The admiration Victor received felt undeserved in Jacob's eyes. He told himself that Victor was overrated, and that his image was carefully built to hide weaknesses. This belief helped Jacob justify his anger. He began to see Victor not just as a rival, but as the reason for his own downfall. The humiliation changed how Jacob saw himself. He no longer felt confident or respected. Instead, he felt invisible and ignored. That feeling scared him. Jacob had built his identity around being important and influential. Without that recognition, he felt empty. He feared becoming irrelevant, forgotten by the same world that once praised him. The idea of fading away was unbearable. His envy was no longer just about money or contracts. It was about survival, status, and self-worth. Over time, Jacob stopped thinking about recovery through normal means. Rebuilding his reputation slowly felt impossible. Every path he considered seemed blocked by Victor's presence. As long as Victor stood above him, Jacob believed he could never regain what he lost. This belief hardened into certainty. He became convinced that removing Victor from the picture was the only solution. It was no longer about competition or fair play. It was about restoring balance in his own mind. Jacob justified this thought by telling himself that Victor had taken something that should have been his. The humiliation pushed him into a corner where extreme thoughts felt reasonable. He stopped seeing Victor as a person and started seeing him as an obstacle. This shift made his decision feel necessary rather than wrong. Jacob's anger gave him a sense of purpose again. For the first time since losing the contract, he felt focused. That focus was dark, but it gave him direction. Jacob's inner world became consumed by one clear idea: destroy Victor to recover prestige. He believed that if Victor fell, his own reputation would rise again. In his imagination, people would stop talking about Victor's success and start questioning it. He pictured himself regaining attention, respect, and influence. This fantasy helped him cope with his current reality. The pain of public humiliation transformed into determination. Jacob stopped feeling like a victim and started seeing himself as someone who needed to act. The loss of the contract no longer felt like the end, but like the beginning of something else. He convinced himself that this was not revenge, but correction. In his mind, the situation needed to be fixed, and he was the one who would fix it. This way of thinking allowed him to move forward without guilt. He no longer questioned his emotions. He accepted them fully. By the end of this transformation, Jacob was no longer the man he had been before the loss. The confident competitor had turned into someone driven by resentment and pride. His goal was no longer success through achievement, but success through destruction. The humiliation he felt had reshaped his values. Regaining prestige became more important than integrity or patience. Jacob believed that his future depended on Victor's downfall. This belief settled deeply inside him and guided his next steps. Even though nothing had happened yet, the decision itself marked a point of no return. Jacob had chosen his path. In his mind, destroying Victor was not an option among many. It was the only way forward. Victor woke up that morning with the contract on his mind. The meeting to sign it was scheduled for later, and everything was already prepared. The documents were reviewed, the terms were agreed on, and there were no surprises left. Even so, he did not rush. Victor followed his usual routine, slow and controlled. Before leaving for the meeting, he decided to stop for coffee at the small cafeteria near his mansion. It was a habit he kept for years, long before his success reached its current level. He liked that place because it was quiet and familiar. No one treated him like a public figure there. He could sit, drink his coffee, and think. That morning, the pause felt necessary. His mind was full, and the silence helped him organize his thoughts. The contract was important, but he wanted a moment that did not involve numbers or decisions. At that point, Victor believed this stop was just another small break in a busy day. He had no idea that this simple choice would matter far more than any meeting waiting for him later. As Victor entered the cafeteria, everything felt normal. The place looked the same as always. with the same arrangement of tables and the same calm atmosphere. He chose a seat where he could sit comfortably and observe without being noticed. For him, these moments were rare. In business, every movement was watched and analyzed. Here, he felt invisible in a way that was peaceful. He ordered his coffee without thinking much about it. While waiting, he looked around and noticed how ordinary everything was. People came and went, focused on their own lives and concerns. No one was thinking about contracts, power, or competition. This contrast reminded Victor of how distant his world had become from normal life. He felt briefly grounded. The coffee was not special, but the routine brought him comfort. It reminded him of earlier days, when small breaks like this were the highlight of his schedule. At that moment, Victor believed he was simply passing time before something important. He did not feel any tension or danger. Everything seemed under control. While sitting there, Victor allowed his thoughts to slow down. He reflected on how far he had come and how routine success had become. Big decisions no longer brought excitement, only responsibility. The contract waiting for him was another proof of his ability, but it did not change how he felt inside. The coffee break felt more real than the meeting ahead. It was one of the few moments where he did not need to perform or decide. He watched people quietly and wondered how different their concerns might be from his. For a short time, he felt detached from his role as a powerful businessman. He was simply a man having coffee before work. This sense of normality was rare and valuable to him. He stayed longer than usual, not because he was late, but because he did not feel rushed. Victor believed that everything important was already settled. The contract would be signed, and the day would continue as planned. Nothing suggested that this pause would change anything at all. Victor checked the time and noted that he still had enough minutes before leaving. He did not feel anxious. Years of experience had taught him to stay calm before major decisions. He trusted his preparation and his instincts. The coffee helped him feel focused and present. His thoughts were clear and his emotions were stable. He felt ready for the meeting ahead. This calm made the moment feel insignificant, just another step in a successful routine. He did not think about consequences or possibilities beyond the schedule. For Victor, life followed logic and planning. Surprises were rare, and when they happened, he handled them. Sitting there, he believed nothing unexpected would occur. The cafeteria was just a place to pause, not a place where anything meaningful could happen. He had no reason to believe otherwise. His attention remained inward, focused on himself and the task ahead. As he finished his coffee, Victor stood up slowly. He gathered his things and prepared to leave. The pause had served its purpose. He felt centered and ready to move on. In his mind, the day was divided into clear steps: coffee, meeting, signature, and then the next challenge. This order gave him confidence. He had followed this pattern many times before. The simplicity of the moment made it easy to underestimate its importance. Victor believed that turning points came from big decisions, not small habits. He did not consider that something ordinary could lead to something extraordinary. For him, change happened in boardrooms, not in cafeterias. With that belief, he moved forward, unaware that this quiet moment had already placed him on a different path. When Victor finally stepped away from the table, the pause ended, but its impact had already begun. At that exact moment, his life still looked the same as it had the day before. He was a successful, respected man on his way to sign a historic contract. Nothing about his appearance or thoughts suggested otherwise. Yet this simple decision to stop for coffee had positioned him at the center of something far larger than he could imagine. Victor did not sense danger, opportunity, or transformation. He only felt calm and routine. The importance of this pause would only become clear later. For now, it remained just a quiet break before a busy day, unnoticed and underestimated, marking the final moment of his life before everything started to change. Jacob reached a point where thinking was no longer enough. After losing the contract and watching his reputation fall, he decided he needed to act. In his mind, destroying Victor was the only way to restore what he had lost. He did not look for complex solutions or long strategies. He wanted something direct and effective. Jacob used his money and influence to find a young man who was drowning in debt. The young man's situation made him vulnerable and desperate. Jacob saw this weakness as an opportunity. He offered money in exchange for a simple task: kill Victor and take the contracts he carried with him. Jacob explained the plan in a cold and practical way, as if it were a business deal. To him, it was not about life or death, but about results. He believed the job would be done quickly and quietly. In his mind, this action would erase Victor's victory and shift the balance back in his favor. Jacob felt justified, convinced that this plan would fix everything that had gone wrong. The plan, on the surface, seemed easy. Jacob believed he had thought of everything that mattered. The target was known, the moment was clear, and the reward was tempting. He assumed that desperation would be enough to push the young man to act without hesitation. Jacob did not spend time understanding who the young man really was. He did not ask about his past, his values, or his limits. He only saw a problem and a solution. To Jacob, the young man was a tool, not a person. He believed fear and money would control the situation. This belief gave Jacob a sense of power he had been missing since losing the contract. He felt in control again. The plan restored his confidence, at least on the surface. He convinced himself that this was necessary and that hesitation would only lead to more loss. In his mind, success justified the method. He ignored the risks that could not be measured or controlled. For the young man, everything felt different. When Jacob explained what he wanted, the weight of the request settled immediately. The money promised could solve his financial problems, but the task itself felt unbearable. He was not a criminal, and he had never imagined harming someone. His debts had pushed him into desperation, but not into violence. As he listened, his thoughts became heavy and confused. He felt trapped between fear and need. Saying no meant continuing to struggle, possibly losing everything. Saying yes meant crossing a line he had never crossed before. The plan sounded simple when Jacob described it, but the reality felt overwhelming. The young man began to understand that accepting this offer would change him forever. Even before taking any action, the decision itself started to weigh on his conscience. He felt pressure from the situation, not confidence. The more the young man thought about the plan, the more the moral conflict grew. He imagined the consequences, not just for Victor, but for himself. He knew that money could not erase what he would have to live with afterward. Fear followed him constantly, not only of getting caught, but of what he would become if he went through with it. Unlike Jacob, who saw the act as a solution, the young man saw it as a permanent stain. His desperation made him listen, but his conscience refused to stay silent. He felt crushed by the responsibility being placed on him. The idea of ending someone's life felt too real, too final. Even before moving forward, he felt the emotional cost pressing down on him. This inner struggle began long before any real action, showing how unprepared he truly was for what Jacob demanded. Jacob, however, did not notice this internal conflict. He believed the agreement was enough, and that the money would silence any doubts. He underestimated the importance of conscience and overestimated his control. In his mind, the young man's hesitation was irrelevant. Jacob focused only on the outcome he wanted. He did not consider that fear and guilt could interfere with the plan. This blindness was the plan's greatest weakness. Jacob assumed that desperation erased morality, but he was wrong. The plan relied on someone who still cared deeply about right and wrong. This flaw remained invisible to Jacob, but it existed from the very beginning. The simplicity of the plan hid its fragility. It looked solid, but it was built on unstable ground. Before anything happened, the young man already felt crushed by the choice he had made. The weight of the decision affected his thoughts and emotions. He questioned himself repeatedly, wondering how he had ended up in this position. He felt ashamed, afraid, and unsure. The plan had not even started, yet it was already failing internally. The young man's moral struggle showed that this was never a clean or simple task. Jacob believed he had created a perfect solution, but the human element made it imperfect from the start. The conflict inside the young man was the first sign that the plan was flawed. Even before action, the pressure of the decision threatened to break everything apart. The cafeteria was quiet, like it usually was during that time of day. Victor was inside, focused on his own thoughts, unaware of what was about to happen. The waitress moved between tables, doing her job as she always did. For her, it was a normal workday, nothing special. Then she noticed someone entering the place and her body reacted before her mind could. It was her brother. She recognized him immediately. What shocked her was not just his presence, but what he was holding. She saw the weapon in his hand, and her heart dropped. In that instant, fear took over her entire body. She understood right away that something terrible was about to happen. She knew her brother well enough to see that he was not himself. His face showed tension and panic, not anger. She did not have time to think calmly or plan. Everything happened very fast. She looked around and realized who the target was. Victor was sitting there, completely unaware. That moment froze her. She felt fear for her brother, fear for the man sitting there, and fear for herself. But more than fear, she felt urgency. The waitress did not stop to consider the risks. She did not think about consequences or her own safety. Her body moved on its own. She stepped forward and placed herself directly between her brother and Victor. Her hands shook, but her voice was firm. She spoke to her brother, not as a stranger, but as family. She reminded him of who he was and who he was not. She told him that he did not need to do this, that this act would destroy his life and hers. Her words were simple, honest, and emotional. She did not argue or threaten. She pleaded. The situation was tense and fragile. Anyone could see that one wrong move could end everything. Her brother stood there, torn between fear, desperation, and the voice of someone he trusted deeply. The weapon was still there, but his confidence was gone. The waitress did not move away. She stayed in front of him, fully exposed, choosing courage over safety in that moment. As she spoke, the brother's internal struggle became visible. He was shaking, breathing heavily, clearly overwhelmed. He was not a criminal by nature, and the reality of what he was about to do was hitting him all at once. The presence of his sister broke the plan apart. Her words reached him in a way no threat or payment ever could. She was not asking him to think about money or consequences. She was asking him to think about his soul, his future, and the people he loved. The weight of the decision became too heavy. The plan that seemed simple before now felt impossible. The brother hesitated, and that hesitation changed everything. The tension created an opening. Victor noticed something was wrong. He did not fully understand the situation, but he sensed danger. The waitress's intervention gave him the chance to react. While the brothers stood frozen, Victor took the opportunity to leave. He did not wait to understand everything. Survival instinct took over. He moved quickly and escaped the cafeteria. The waitress did not turn around. Her focus stayed on her brother. She knew that if she looked away, the situation could change again. The brother lowered the weapon. His shoulders dropped, and his face showed relief mixed with shame. The plan was broken. What was supposed to be a quick and cold action had turned into an emotional collapse. The presence of love and family destroyed the control Jacob thought he had. The waitress's courage did not come from strength, but from care. She was willing to risk everything to stop her brother from making a mistake he could never undo. That choice changed the direction of every life involved. After Victor escaped, the reality of what had almost happened settled in. The brother realized how close he had come to ruining everything. He felt fear, regret, and relief all at once. The waitress felt her legs weaken, but she stayed standing. She had done what she believed was right, even though it terrified her. The cafeteria slowly returned to a sense of normality, but the atmosphere had changed. Nothing was the same anymore. The plan was no longer active. The danger had passed, but the consequences were just beginning. The waitress understood that this moment would follow her forever. She had stepped into a situation bigger than her job, bigger than her routine. She had crossed a line that could not be erased, but she did not regret it. This single act of courage altered the future for everyone involved. Victor survived because someone chose to act without hesitation. The brother was saved from becoming someone he was not. The waitress proved that one human decision could stop a chain of destruction. What began as an ordinary workday became the most important moment of her life. The plan failed not because of force or strategy, but because of compassion. In that brief and dangerous moment, the direction of several lives changed. The waitress did not see herself as a hero. She only saw a brother in pain and a man in danger. That was enough. Victor arrived at the place where the contract would be signed with everything prepared. The documents were ready, the terms were clear, and all the people involved expected a smooth process. From the outside, this moment looked like a complete victory. It was the largest contract of his career, the result of years of work, pressure, and discipline. When Victor signed his name, there were handshakes and quiet approval around him. The deal was done. Professionally, it was a success without flaws. Yet inside, Victor felt no joy. Instead of relief or pride, he felt a strange heaviness. His mind kept returning to the events at the cafeteria. The image of danger, confusion, and escape stayed with him. He realized that he was sitting there signing papers only because someone had stepped in at the right moment. The contract was real, but so was the fact that he had almost lost his life. That thought refused to leave him. As the meeting ended, Victor remained calm on the outside, as he always did. He thanked the people involved and followed the expected behavior. No one noticed that his thoughts were elsewhere. The success felt distant, almost unreal. Usually, after closing an important deal, Victor felt focused and ready for the next step. This time, the victory felt incomplete. The money, the influence, and the recognition did not quiet his mind. Instead, he felt unsettled. He began to understand that the contract mattered less than the fact that he was still alive to sign it. That realization changed the meaning of the moment. Gratitude replaced ambition. The feeling grew stronger with each minute. Victor was not used to feeling vulnerable. He had built his life around control. Now he was forced to face how close he had come to losing everything. This awareness created discomfort. The success reminded him of danger, not power. As Victor left the building, the weight inside him did not fade. He replayed the scene at the cafeteria in his mind. He did not know all the details, but he knew one thing clearly. Someone had acted to protect him. Someone had taken a risk without expecting anything in return. That thought stayed with him. Gratitude began to turn into responsibility. Victor realized that moving on as if nothing had happened felt wrong. The contract had been secured, but a human connection had been formed in the most unexpected way. He felt a growing need to acknowledge it. Ignoring it would mean ignoring the truth of what had happened. Victor was not someone who avoided uncomfortable truths. He believed in facing facts directly, even when they challenged his usual way of thinking. This situation did exactly that. The feeling of unease pushed Victor to make a decision. He chose to return to the cafeteria. Not for business, not out of routine, but out of necessity. He needed to express his gratitude. The woman who had intervened had changed the course of his life. Even if she did not fully understand the impact of her actions, Victor did. He felt that thanking her was the minimum he could do. This decision was not driven by strategy or image. It came from a place he rarely accessed, a place of humility and awareness. For the first time in a long while, Victor felt guided by emotion rather than logic. That alone made the moment significant. When Victor returned to the cafeteria, the place looked ordinary again. The danger was gone, but the memory remained. He did not feel fear this time, only respect. He looked for the woman who had stood between him and death. When he found her, he felt a strong sense of gratitude mixed with seriousness. This was not a casual thank you. It was something deeper. He understood that words might not fully express what he felt, but he needed to try. Approaching her, Victor felt different than he did in boardrooms or meetings. There was no power balance, no negotiation. Just two people connected by a moment that could not be undone. As Victor spoke to her, he thanked her for saving his life. The words were simple, but they carried weight. He acknowledged that without her courage, none of his success would matter. The contract, the money, and the future he had planned would not exist. Saying this out loud made the truth even clearer to him. The triumph he had achieved earlier felt small compared to this realization. Gratitude stayed with him, but so did guilt. He wondered how close he had been to ignoring the human side of his life completely. This moment marked a shift. Victor understood that survival had given him more than another contract. It had given him a reason to look beyond success and face the value of human actions. Victor listened carefully as the woman spoke. At first, the conversation felt calm, focused on gratitude and relief. Then she mentioned something that caught his attention. She explained that she had once worked for his company many years ago. Victor was surprised and asked questions to understand better. As she continued, it became clear that she had been one of the oldest employees in the organization. She spoke without anger, but with honesty. She explained that she had been dismissed suddenly and unfairly. There was no warning and no clear reason given. What shocked Victor most was learning that this decision had been made without his knowledge or approval. He had never authorized her dismissal. Hearing this created a strong sense of discomfort. Victor took pride in being involved in major decisions, especially those affecting people's lives. Realizing that something like this had happened under his name, without his consent, made him feel responsible. The success of his company now felt connected to a painful injustice he had never known about. As the woman continued, Victor felt a growing sense of guilt. He understood that his position of power came with responsibility, whether he was aware of every action or not. She explained how losing her job had changed her life. It was not just a professional loss, but a personal one. She had trusted the company and believed in its values. Being dismissed unfairly had left her struggling and forced her into a completely different reality. Victor listened without interrupting. He did not defend the company or make excuses. He accepted the truth as it was presented to him. For the first time, he clearly saw how distance from daily operations could allow injustice to happen. This realization hurt. His company, which represented years of effort and discipline, had also caused harm. That truth was difficult to accept. The conversation was no longer just about gratitude. It had become a mirror showing Victor the consequences of things he had failed to see. The conversation then turned to the brother. Victor learned that the young man had not acted out of hatred or greed. He had been pushed by financial desperation. The woman explained how her brother had been overwhelmed by debt, with no clear way out. This pressure made him vulnerable. Someone took advantage of that vulnerability and coerced him into accepting the plan. Hearing this changed how Victor saw the situation entirely. He realized that the brother had not chosen violence freely. He had been trapped by circumstances. This did not excuse the act, but it explained it. Victor felt a mix of sadness and understanding. The situation was no longer simple. It was not just a failed attack. It was a chain of desperation, mistakes, and exploitation. Each part of the story added weight to what had happened. Victor felt the burden of knowing that his survival was tied to the suffering of others. As the woman spoke about her brother, her voice showed concern rather than defense. She did not deny what had almost happened. She acknowledged the seriousness of it. At the same time, she explained the regret her brother felt even before acting. This detail stayed with Victor. It confirmed what he already sensed. The young man was not built for crime. He had been pushed into a role that did not match who he was. Victor recognized this pattern. In business, pressure often forced people into decisions they would not otherwise make. Seeing this reality outside of contracts and meetings made it more personal. Victor felt that the situation reflected a larger failure, not just of individuals, but of systems that allowed desperation to grow unchecked. This understanding deepened his guilt. The truth hurt because it connected his world to theirs in ways he had never considered. The more Victor listened, the heavier the conversation became. He realized that his life, his company, and his success were connected to more people than he ever allowed himself to see. The unfair dismissal had pushed the woman into hardship. That hardship had affected her family. Her brother's desperation had led him into a situation that nearly ended in tragedy. Victor understood that none of this was intentional on his part, but intention did not erase impact. This truth was painful. He had always believed that discipline and structure protected against chaos. Now he saw that distance and lack of oversight could create harm quietly. The conversation forced him to confront his role not just as a businessman, but as a human being whose decisions and systems affected real lives. When the conversation ended, Victor felt changed. The gratitude he felt earlier had turned into something heavier. It became responsibility mixed with regret. He now carried knowledge he could not ignore. The truths he learned were uncomfortable, but necessary. He understood that surviving the attack was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of facing consequences he had never imagined. The woman had saved his life, but she had also revealed painful realities about his own world. Victor left the conversation aware that some truths cannot be undone once known. They stay with you, demanding action, reflection, and change. Victor could not walk away after learning the truth. The guilt he felt did not allow him to pretend that everything was finished. He understood that what had happened connected his life to the lives of the two siblings in a permanent way. His sense of responsibility grew stronger than his desire to return to normal. Victor decided that protection was necessary, not only for himself, but also for them. He knew that the situation was dangerous and that there were forces involved that could cause more harm. Acting quickly and carefully, he made sure that both siblings would be safe. This decision was not impulsive. It came from a deep awareness that his survival had placed him in their debt. He did not see this as charity. He saw it as duty. Victor believed that when power creates damage, power must also be used to repair it. That belief guided his next steps and shaped how he chose to move forward. Victor arranged for the brother to work as his personal security. This choice was deliberate and complex. He knew the young man needed stability, guidance, and a chance to rebuild his life. At the same time, Victor understood the seriousness of what had almost happened. Because of that, the arrangement included police monitoring. The brother was not free from consequences, but he was given structure instead of abandonment. This balance mattered to Victor. He did not want revenge or punishment. He wanted prevention and responsibility. The brother accepted the role with humility and seriousness. He knew this was an opportunity he did not deserve, but desperately needed. The presence of law enforcement added tension, but also safety. It ensured that everything remained controlled. Victor believed that accountability and support could exist together. This decision reflected a new way of thinking, one that considered people, not just outcomes. As this professional arrangement took shape, Victor's connection with the waitress also began to change. Their interactions became more frequent and more personal. What started as gratitude slowly turned into emotional closeness. Victor found himself listening to her in a way he rarely listened to anyone. Their conversations were quiet and honest. There was no pressure or expectation. He did not see her as someone beneath him or above him. He saw her as someone real. This simplicity felt unfamiliar but comforting. The bond grew without promises or labels. It was based on shared experience and understanding. The waitress did not seek his attention or his status. That made the connection stronger. Victor felt seen without being judged. This was something he had not felt in a long time. The closeness between them developed naturally. Victor noticed that he trusted her easily. He spoke openly about his thoughts and doubts, something he rarely did. She listened without trying to fix him or impress him. This created a quiet space where he felt safe. There was no rush and no drama. Their bond was subtle but deep. It grew through shared silence as much as through words. Victor realized that this connection did not drain him like most relationships in his world. Instead, it grounded him. The simplicity of her presence contrasted with the complexity of his life. This balance brought him a sense of calm he did not know he was missing. He did not define the relationship, but he valued it deeply. At the same time, Victor remained careful. He understood that the situation required vigilance. The brothers' role as security came with clear boundaries and expectations. The police oversight ensured that nothing would be hidden or ignored. Victor wanted transparency in everything. This was not about control, but about preventing future harm. He made sure that both siblings understood the seriousness of the situation. Protection did not mean freedom from responsibility. It meant guidance and supervision. This approach reflected Victor's evolving mindset. He was no longer acting only as a businessman. He was acting as someone who understood the weight of influence. His decisions now considered emotional and moral impact, not just practical outcomes. Through these choices, a silent transformation took place. Victor's life, once defined by distance and isolation, began to include trust and connection. The waitress became someone important to him, not because of what she had done, but because of who she was. The brother found structure instead of destruction. Victor felt that he was finally addressing something deeper than business. This chapter of his life was not loud or public. It happened quietly, through responsibility, protection, and emotional closeness. The bond that formed did not need words to be real. It was built on shared understanding, accountability, and the recognition that lives can change when someone chooses to care. Victor's connection with the woman continued to grow quietly over time. What started as respect and gratitude slowly became something deeper. Their bond was not rushed or forced. It developed through daily presence, shared moments, and mutual understanding. Victor found comfort in her honesty and calm way of seeing life. She did not admire him for his money or power, but for who he was when those things were set aside. This made him feel safe. For the first time in many years, Victor allowed himself to be emotionally present. He shared parts of his life he usually kept hidden. With her, he did not feel the need to control everything. This sense of ease was new and surprising. Love grew naturally between them, built on trust rather than excitement. Victor realized that his feelings were no longer tied to success or achievement. They were tied to connection. This shift made him feel alive in a different way. He was no longer defined only by what he built, but by who he shared his life with. As their relationship deepened, marriage became a natural step rather than a planned move. Victor did not see it as a public statement or social achievement. To him, it was a personal choice rooted in commitment and care. The marriage marked a clear change in his life. He was no longer alone when he returned home. The house that once felt empty now felt occupied with meaning. The presence of someone who truly knew him changed his daily life. He began to see the world differently. Decisions were no longer made only for growth or protection. They were made with family in mind. This responsibility felt different from business pressure. It was not exhausting. It was grounding. Victor felt that he was building something lasting, something not measured by contracts or profits. Marriage gave structure to his emotions and direction to his life. It made him feel stable in a way success never had. For the first time, his personal life felt as important as his professional one. The arrival of children changed Victor even more. Becoming a father introduced emotions he had never experienced. Responsibility took on a new meaning. He was no longer thinking only about the present or the next business step. He was thinking about the future in human terms. His children gave him a sense of purpose that money could not replace. Their presence filled spaces inside him that had been empty for years. Victor found joy in simple moments he once ignored. Time with his family became something he protected fiercely. Work was still important, but it was no longer everything. He learned to slow down, to be present, and to listen. His identity expanded. He was no longer just a businessman or a leader. He was a husband and a father. This shift brought balance. He felt connected to something real and lasting. The family became his anchor, giving meaning to everything he had built before. With love, marriage, and children, Victor felt a strong sense of belonging. For the first time, he felt part of something bigger than his own ambition. His life no longer revolved only around control and success. It included care, responsibility, and shared growth. This balance made him believe he had finally found stability. He felt redeemed from the loneliness that once defined him. The past struggles and sacrifices now seemed justified. Victor believed that he had reached a point where power and affection could exist together. He felt complete. His achievements no longer stood alone. They were connected to people who mattered. This belief brought him peace. He trusted that he had learned how to live fully, not just win. The emptiness that once followed him was replaced by routine family life. To Victor, this felt like the reward for everything he had endured. He believed that this balance would last. Victor's confidence in this new life was strong. He believed that love had corrected the mistakes of the past. His family gave him emotional safety, and his success provided material security. Together, they formed what he saw as a solid foundation. He felt proud of the man he had become. He believed he had found a way to combine ambition with humanity. This belief shaped how he saw the future. Victor no longer feared being alone. He felt supported and understood. The sense of redemption was powerful. He believed that his story had reached a stable chapter. The struggles, risks, and losses felt distant. In their place stood a family and a life that felt balanced. Victor trusted this feeling completely. He did not question it. He believed that the hardest part of his journey was behind him. This period of Victor's life was marked by calm and confidence. He felt rooted in his family and satisfied with his path. The illusion of stability felt real and unbreakable. Love gave him meaning, family gave him identity, and success gave him security. Together, they created a sense of harmony he had never known before. Victor believed he had finally found the right balance between power, affection, and redemption. He felt whole. Victor did not fall suddenly. The collapse came slowly, built from decisions made long before he noticed the cracks. The same system that once helped him rise now worked against him. Trust placed in structures, people, and methods he believed were solid began to fail. Conspiracies formed quietly, hidden behind contracts and agreements that once felt safe. Victor realized too late that power creates enemies, and success attracts those who wait for the right moment to strike. Past choices returned with consequences he could no longer control. One problem led to another, and solutions became harder to find. Financial pressure increased and control slipped from his hands. For the first time in his career, Victor could not fix everything with discipline and strategy. The fall hurt because it attacked the identity he had built for decades. The businessman who always won now faced limits. The certainty he once carried disappeared, replaced by uncertainty and fear. He fought to keep everything standing, but the weight was too heavy. The collapse was not just financial, it was emotional, forcing him to face a version of himself he never wanted to meet. As the situation worsened, Victor watched his fortune disappear. Assets were lost, influence faded, and the respect he once commanded no longer protected him. The loss of money was painful, but the loss of status was even harder. Doors that were once open closed without explanation. People who once listened stopped answering. Victor understood how fragile power truly was. The wealth he believed was permanent proved temporary. Everything he had built through numbers and contracts could be taken away. This realization was brutal. The fall stripped away illusions and forced him to see what remained when success was gone. He felt anger, disappointment, and regret. He questioned his past choices and wondered if things could have been different. The system he trusted had no mercy. It did not care about his intentions or past achievements. It only reacted to weakness. Victor stood inside the ruins of the life he had worked so hard to build, aware that nothing could return to what it once was. During this loss, Victor expected to feel completely empty. He expected abandonment and isolation, just like before. But something was different this time. When everything else collapsed, his family remained. His wife stayed by his side, not because of money or comfort, but because of love. His children did not see him as a failed businessman. They saw him as a father. This difference changed how Victor experienced the fall. The pain was real, but it was not lonely. He was not facing it alone. The presence of his family gave him strength he did not know he had. For the first time, loss did not erase his sense of worth. He had lost his fortune, but not his place in someone's life. This realization softened the impact of failure. Victor began to understand that his true value was not tied to wealth. It was tied to connection. As time passed, Victor reflected on everything he had lost and everything that remained. The contrast was clear. Money had vanished, but love stayed. Power had disappeared, but trust remained. The fall forced him to redefine success. He no longer measured life by what he controlled, but by what he protected. His family became his foundation. Through them, he found meaning beyond achievement. The pain of failure did not disappear, but it became manageable. Victor accepted that his past life was over. He could not return to who he was before. This acceptance marked a turning point. Instead of fighting reality, he faced it. He understood that the fall, as painful as it was, had removed distractions. What remained was simple and real. That simplicity brought clarity. Victor no longer needed to prove himself to the world. With nothing left to lose materially, Victor saw the possibility of beginning again. Not from ambition, but from understanding. The chance to restart did not come with guarantees or comfort. It came with humility. He knew rebuilding would be difficult, but he also knew he was no longer alone. The lessons learned from loss were deeper than any success had taught him. He understood the cost of distance, the danger of blind trust, and the importance of presence. Victor did not see the future as a return to power. He saw it as a chance to live differently. The fall had broken his old identity, but it had also freed him from it. This freedom felt strange but honest. He was no longer chasing approval or dominance. He was choosing meaning. In the end, Victor understood what truly remained: family, love, and the chance to start again with clearer eyes. The fortune was gone, but something stronger had survived. The fall had taken everything he thought mattered and left him with what actually did. Victor stood at the beginning of a new chapter, not as a powerful man, but as a complete one. Faça uma call de finalização para o canal Muller Tales. If you want to keep following stories like this, real human drama, shocking twists, and life-changing decisions, you're in the right place. This is Muller Tales, where every story goes deeper than it seems. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. Leave a comment with your thoughts, your perspective, or where you're watching from. Your support helps this channel grow. Thank you for watching Muller Tales. See you in the next story.